Welcome back to Post Sports Live. I'm your host, Jonathan Forsythe, and joining me in the Post TV studios, the monochromatic LaVar Arrington. How are you, LaVar?
Interesting. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, I'm fine, thanks.
Good.
Joining us back for the first time since your coverage in Sochi is Mike Wise. How you doing, Mike?
Good, I'm monochromatic too.
Yeah, well, you got the blue jeans, so
Yeah,
at least you got
okay,
a little
sorry.
bit. Dan, how you doing, man? You love this portion of the show. Talk about the weather or something.
I'm great.
Baby.
I'm actually excited about NCAA basketball.
Heck yeah,
I'm
man.
having a good
This
time.
is one of my favorite times of the
Yeah.
year. Well, we'll get into that on the show. Lots to talk about today. We're going to lead off with Caps today. We didn't have a chance to get to them last week with all the additions at the trade deadline. We'll talk about the loss against Pittsburgh last night, but some of these new additions specifically and how they're going to impact the team with 16 games remaining. Really make or break time for the Caps. Not an unfamiliar position for them, though. We'll talk about the Redskins. Today's first day of free agency. There's already some news. If you're following Mike Jones on the Insider, we'll talk about the signing that they have a wide receiver signed already this morning. That's not official, obviously, until the deadline later at 4 o'clock today.
Santana Moss's replacement, basically.
That's right. That's what it looks like.
Was it Malcolm Kelly?
Easy now. We're going to talk about the ACC Tournament
That's not even
and Virginia. We haven't got a chance to talk much about Virginia this year. They are a local team, I say in air quotes, so we'll talk about them and their chances at the ACC Tournament and what that could mean for their NCAA Tournament seeding. And then finally, Mike will wrap up with some Sochi highlights from you from your coverage over in Russia.
Yeah, how many people are going to be watching at that point?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how many people are watching right now.
Well,
You beat me
Dan would
to it.
beg to differ. He's already tweeted it out, so
Yeah.
we have at least 5
Well, there you go. There's
viewers.
a couple of people anyway.
There you go.
You got something, Mike?
I just forgot to
No,
tweet
all right.
it out.
Well, let's start off with the Caps, guys. Tough loss last night, though. They outplayed Pittsburgh, but Oates remains winless against the Penguins, their rivals. But I don't want to focus on the game as much, Dan, as I do about the new additions. Penner, Halak, and, of course, Kuznetsov, who made his debut last night. What kind of impact do we expect these guys to have 16 games left?
I mean, I think that the impact of Halak is going to be immense at this point. You know, they're playing with their season at stake against their arch rival, and they've already got this guy playing goal for them. I think clearly he's the most important at this point for the rest of this season of those 3 guys that you mentioned. And he played okay. There seems to be some kind of communication issues with the defense, which is probably something that you'd expect, I guess, with a new guy. Or with Mike Green, yeah. But, you know, Kuznetsov got 10 minutes, didn't really do anything to distinguish himself one way or the other. I think that he'll probably start getting more minutes and, you know, certainly spend less time on the 4th line as the season goes on. But, you know, clearly the good thing about having him here, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, is that he's going to get some experience so that next year he can, you know, have a head start on what's really his rookie season. I don't think that, you know, this guy playing 10 minutes a game or 12 minutes or whatever it is going to be the difference between Washington making the playoffs or not. But I think it's great, you know, for the long-term development of him. But I think for this year, it's Halak is the guy that you got to keep an eye on.
Mike, would you agree with that as far as the impact of these guys? Halak obviously having the biggest one in goal.
No, well, if you believe they're going to make the playoffs, and I don't, so I think that it was almost like a George McPhee, get me somebody to do something for our playoff push because I couldn't find a defenseman, and nobody could at the NHL trade deadline. But I think to his point, Kuznetsov, this is all about him. He gets in the middle of a playoff push, which I don't think is going to be successful, but it could. Stranger things have happened. And at least he's around. And the funny thing is, standing next to the guy last night, they list him at 6'2", 200. He's probably 6'2", 185. A very wiry guy. Fast, incredibly quick, and obviously has some stick handling skills. But it'd be interesting if he can adjust to the physical play of the NHL off the bat. I think it's going to take a while. I think he's going to have to grow up a little bit.
I think it's interesting you say that because the Caps TV commentators were saying how much bigger he looked than when he was here for a development camp a little while ago.
Oh, he must even be skinnier
then.
then.
Yeah, they were saying he was such a string bean then. So if he still is that way, I guess.
LaVar, what kind of impact do you expect these guys to have? What about Penner? Here's a big guy who comes in for Erat. It's got to be an upgrade along the front as far as a big body who can kind of get in and mix it up. One of the things the team has been missing in a lot of ways.
I mean, they have been missing that, and I could talk about Penner or Kuznetsov. There you go.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to Halak. I think that what Halak brings to the table, even though you're probably right, McPhee probably did want to get a defenseman that was legit. Everybody talks about improving, guarding the blue line and then defending it. But I think that by bringing in Halak and unloading Neuwirth, for one, you're planning for the future. So it would seem, for one, for the sense that you cleared a contract that was of significant value, but you also brought in a guy that whether he's been playing very well or not, what he's capable of doing as a goalie. And I think that McPhee did it for multiple reasons. One, for the contractual side of it. Two, to challenge Braden and say, look, I know you came in as the golden boy, but and people are defending you, saying that, look, it's defensemen that are costing this team, not the goalie. But we're going to bring in this old vet that we know can play well. We know firsthand that he can play well, and I think they are going to ride him. And I think they really feel as though if they're going to have a chance to make a playoff run, they want it to be competitive, to figure out who they're going to use. But I ultimately think that they've lost some hope, or not hope, some faith and trust, I'd say, in Braden Holtby, and so that's why I think they brought him.
We'll see if Halak fares any better with still a weak defense right ahead of him like Holtby did. I have a question for you guys, and this is a simple one. Here's the scenario.
Yep.
The Caps are at 70 points. The magic number seems to be 92 to make the playoffs, history suggests. They're fighting. They're 1 point out of the playoffs if the season were to end today. Obviously, they have a very difficult schedule ahead. Simple question. Does this team make the playoffs, Dan Steinberg?
No, and when you say that, no, they're not going to make the playoffs, I don't think. And when you say that they're 1 point out, it's true, but the teams ahead of them both have 2 games in hand.
Right.
The team next, Philadelphia, in the division has a game in hand also, and they have the brutal schedule, and this is what we've been waiting for since before the Olympic break. We've been talking about it. They've got 3 tough road games out west. They've got the game in Pittsburgh. So they've got some other Western teams at home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've got a brutal schedule, and they've proven to be a pretty mediocre team. I don't see how you can put
Mike,
those things together and get a playoff.
You sort of wrote the same thing in your column today. What do you think?
Yeah, I just didn't get the sense that this has the likes of what's happened the last few years, when they sort of back in and they get hot at the end and everybody gets excited. And I just don't see that happening. And part of it is the schedule. When they go out west and they play at Anaheim and at the LA Kings, I look at that as 2 losses. Most people will say, oh, who knows? Anaheim
and
got
at San Jose too. Was the next one.
And they got the Sharks after that. I mean, they could go 0-3 on that Western swing, and that could be it. Or you could put yourself in real dire shape. So, big picture, when I'm out there last night, I didn't get this in my column. There were legions of Penguins fans again for the first time in a while that I remember, and there was a time when Crosby scored the second goal when I looked up, and I thought the Caps had scored a goal because it got so loud in there, and I thought to myself, "This is where we are right now? We're going backwards." Because before there was a feeling that there weren't too many of these people let in, and I know they have a strong fan base. All of a sudden, it's noisy again in there last night, and it's for the other team, and it's not good.
LaVar, last year they went 15-2-2 down the stretch. Can they recapture the magic?
No.
We're going to add a minute, by the way.
I think the reason why for me, the reason why I think that it would be difficult is because of the goalie play. When we've seen them make their runs historically, they've had 2 or 3 dating back to Jose, and to last season with Braden playing the way that he played and Neuwirth playing the way he played. The goalie play is not what it needs to be right now. For whatever reason or not, the pucks are getting into the goals, getting into the net, and I don't see them changing the outcome of this season with that type of play. So it makes it difficult to say that they would be able to have success with the schedule that they have.
I'll tell you what's up next if you're curious. If this goes the way we're all saying it's going to go, there's going to be a lot of heat on Adam Oates. We've been talking about the heat on George McPhee for years, but Adam Oates has still never beaten the Penguins. And as my friend JP from Japers Rink says, how long is a Redskins coach going to last if he can never beat the Cowboys?
Yeah, I don't even put this on Adam Oates. This to me falls
it's got to be above.
Yeah, I mean, this is to me is. Even the goalie situation, I don't think Ken Dryden could save them right now. They don't have a perimeter defense to stop anybody, and I don't feel like they have a defenseman. And that's not Oates' fault.
But some of this comes back on Oates for sure. The way they've managed assets, Erat falling out. Erat goes to Phoenix and scores right away with them. They had an asset that just did nothing for them there. The way they've handled their defense.
Do you think that's Oates?
Some of that does.
It
yes.
could. This sounds like a good debate for next week's show.
Should have
Or
been
maybe
this
the week
week,
after
but
that.
it should have been this week. But
How
this
about
week.
this? Oates gets his first win over Pittsburgh tonight. There's a bold prediction for you. All right, Redskins. What do they need to do, LaVar, to prioritize what positions? Sounds like they're making hard runs at secondary help in the defense. Obviously, that's a big area of weakness. They've already signed a wide receiver, Andre Roberts. What do you know about him?
Nothing.
All right.
I know absolutely nothing about him. I'll say this. I do believe they got Perry Riley signed.
Yes,
That is right now. That is the biggest signing of this offseason is getting Perry Riley signed. Not Arakpo, not D Hall. Getting Perry Riley signed is probably the single biggest signing for this team. And I'm not biased because I'm a linebacker and he wears 56. You lose London Fletcher and already a porous defense, a struggling defense that needs to be revamped. The one thing you cannot do is lose both of your guys in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
You can't afford to do that. So getting Perry Riley signed, hopefully it's a good contract where he's happy with it and he's comfortable with it and comes in as the leader of this defense. I think that's the biggest signing. So, but as a whole, the defense has to be addressed. I think that RG3, barring any other type of circumstances, if it's just we're saying football, he comes back, I think he's going to be a better player this year based off of being removed from the knee injury for as long as he has. So I look at the defense because you can do things that are creative to utilize RG3 being healthier this year than what he was this past season. You got to get that defense secondary together. I would go after. I would lose the house. I'd pay the ranch to get Jarius Byrd. You haven't had a safety, and people say since Sean Taylor. I'd even be willing to say, when you look at Sean Taylor, that was the product of a very, very strong defense. So we didn't even know. Sean Taylor wasn't even at the peak of what his potential was. Sean Taylor was a playmaker. We don't know how much of a safety he was at that point in time in his career. So that we have not had a playmaker, nor have we had a quality safety in quite some time. He's on the market. Jarius Byrd shows that he can be that guy. I would say if you're going to give up the bank to go,
they have $18 million to work with. They've
him.
already signed Riley. They've signed this receiver. You're saying it's worth.
I'd go get him.
Go get Byrd.
I would go get Byrd.
Do you agree with that, Mike?
It's hard. I do and I die. On one hand, Jim Haslett has been hamstrung because, and he'd tell you this off the record probably, that if any money, not that I've ever spoken to him, if any money is to be spent during the Shanahan years, it was going to Kyle's offense, not Jim Haslett's defense. And at some point they had to rectify that. On the flip side, Robert Griffin III is still the franchise, and you gave up the house to get him. And if you really believe that you have the people around him on offense that is going to make his job easier, including the offensive line, I don't buy it. I think you still need to spend some money on an offensive lineman to really protect this guy. And, Andre Roberts is supposed to be a good slot receiver, the next Santana Moss. I want the next possession receiver. When this guy gets a possession receiver, a 6'2" guy that can catch something across the middle like I could at Campbell High in Ewa Beach, Hawaii, 20,000 years ago, that's the guy you want.
They need a Mike Wise type receiver. That sounds about right. That's what everybody's clamoring for.
I think they need a guy who stretches the field.
You think
if you're going to go?
You say Garcon's the
you think Garcon is a possession
I think he's a little mix.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a mix. I think
regardless, they will be linked to more wide receivers, and I think Roberts will not be the last wide receiver that they bring in.
Kenny Britt?
Kenny Britt, or Hawkins,
he
the guy
can
from
stretch it.
I think they'll get another receiver in here. But I think, every big defensive secondary free agent right now has been linked to the Redskins. At least it's someone they're interested in.
Go ahead, continue. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it's sort of back to the old days where lots of big names out there and the Redskins being linked to lots of them.
Well, let's add a couple minutes to this, guys, because there's more to go, more names to get through, and one of them is Carlos Rogers, guys. What about the prospects, LaVar, of Carlos coming back?
I don't think he would come back.
Early reports are that he might be interested in coming back.
Well, if he would come back, then he's naive.
Come on.
Yeah? You don't think so?
Come on,
The
LaVar.
way he left, but here's the thing. I gave money back to get out of here.
That's true. You did.
Multiples of millions to
That's
get out of
true,
here.
you did.
I'll say this. The way it seemed like the relationship ended with Carlos Rogers and the Redskins, you wouldn't think that he would come back.
Okay.
Was that about him and Shanahan, or was that about him and management and everybody?
And that could
He
play a
liked
major
Haslett,
part.
right? He and
don't know.
Haslett
Because I think if Shanahan's out of the picture, maybe
that's what it
I
is.
mean, there's no team that he could go to where he would be under as much scrutiny from fans in the media as he
and
would be
they
here. And I
hated
don't know why he
They
would want to
hated
do that
him
to
here.
himself. Where every time his hand gets within 5 feet of the ball, people are gonna holler and scream if he
But
doesn't
maybe
catch
they
it.
look at him differently because he had a Pro Bowl career in
Went to the Super
San
Bowl.
Francisco.
And then there's Darrell Revis, who London Fletcher is pitching for hard, which Dan, you wrote about this morning.
Yeah, I mean, London Fletcher suddenly, he was Mr. Quiet, Mr. Company Line when he was in the locker room. Now that he's, mostly retired and he's on Twitter, he's like calling people out and saying the Redskins need to go get Revis.
It'd be the old Redskins,
I'm
right?
down.
Yeah,
I'm down on London, by the way. It's just me. I mean, and you know what it is? I don't like guys that are company men for the public, and then behind the scenes are playing Machiavellian games and telling people different things. And London Fletcher told a lot of people different things about what he said publicly. So I guess what I'm getting at is the guy's already 0 for 1 with Shanahan. Didn't he endorse getting back Shanahan back?
He did.
Done. All right, so don't listen to him on this one either.
Oh, there you go. I think a lot of fans would be in
I'm
favor of not bringing in Revis
I
for
don't
a
like
big trade.
people that are not authentic.
All right.
And London Fletcher's
20
not
seconds
authentic.
left.
What? Really?
He's not an authentic guy. He tells a lot of he tells a lot of things behind the scenes. This is a personal vendetta. We don't want to take it there. Let's go.
All right, moving on. Well, let's end it right there. That's a passionate way to end that segment on free agency. Stay tuned to the Insider for more on the Redskins free agent moves. We'll talk more about
I wanna
it
read
next
that.
week. There you go.
That's what happens when you're
Shifting
not
gears.
gear.
How do
I feel a little betrayed
How
by
that-
London.
Clearly.
I feel a little betrayed.
How do I transition from that to the ACC
This
tournament?
is what happens to you when you're in the media.
Man.
Then somebody else isn't.
All right,
Yeah.
Mr. Steinberg.
I never did it to you because you
One of your
always told
favorite
me-
times of
always
year.
told you the truth, my
We'll
friend.
keep moving with this show, guys, when you're ready.
on.
So how many ACC tournament teams? Well, I guess that's not a good question because we think it's going to be 5. But what is the best and worst case scenario for UVA at this point? They had won 13 in a row, lost to Maryland, but they're the top seed, 16-2 in the ACC this year. Best case, worst case for NCAA.
We were talking about it earlier. I guess when you talk about best case, I guess the best case still could be a one seed,
Sure
depending on
could.
how many other people lose.
If they win the ACC
If they
tournament.
win the ACC tournament, and if a lot of people kind of drop off. I guess when I was saying I don't believe that a 1 seed is really in play for them because I don't think they're going to win the ACC tournament. I don't think they're going to get all the help that they would need for that to happen. I think that the path was a lot smoother if they hadn't lost that game to Maryland, obviously. And, that's probably not super surprising with this game being Maryland's ACC finale, all the energy in that building. Maryland, a huge long shot for the NCAA tournament at this point. But
Let's not even talk about that.
okay, but that game was
What if they win
like
2 games?
No, God, they have to win the ACC
probably
tournament.
win the ACC tournament. Anyhow, so Maryland had everything to play for there, and Virginia, I don't know, letdown game or what, but still an amazing season for Virginia. And if they go into Greensboro and if they take down the Powers, I think that 1 seed probably is in play. But I think it's going to be tough for them, and I think it's going to come down to Duke or Carolina again. Honestly,
You don't see Syracuse doing it.
I think it's going to be Duke or
It's
Carolina.
going to be in Greensboro. Of course, it's going to be Duke or Carolina. Mike, what do you think about UVA as far as their? Let's say they lose. Let's say they win their first game in the ACC, lose to Carolina or something like that. 2 or 3 seed.
Yeah, best case scenario 2. I actually think they should be at 2. I wouldn't put them at 3. I think it disadvantage, and you get a tougher draw in the bracket. I'd like to see them get a 2. I'm with him. This is the best time of year. The tournament's coming out. The bracket's coming out. I love this. I know you love opening weekend of the NFL season. This is the best time of the year to me. I love this. I love this time of year. And I'm going to go on record right now on Post Live to tell you that Wichita State is going to win the national championship and become the first undefeated team to finish a season in college basketball since Indiana in 1976.
Classic Mike Wise under a little caption that says, "What will Virginia do in the ACC tournament?" He's talking about Wichita.
Wichita State.
sorry.
That's all right. We're trying to stay on point here with the
Virginia's
ACC.
awesome. It's the best team that they've had since Ralph Sampson.
LaVar, they have to get by either Florida State or Maryland the first game. Then they'll play likely Carolina if the seedings hold. in the semifinals. Then they'd have to play Duke or Syracuse in all likelihood in the championship game. Do you like their chances in the ACC tournament? No. All right. They also got snubbed. It's also worth mentioning they got snubbed off the all ACC teams, going 16-2, and they didn't have one player on there.
I get it, but tourney time is different time, and teams like Duke, which some people would say the greatest coach ever in the history of coaches, coaches Duke. Tournament time is just different. You know, you're going to just have different frames of mind. You're going to have different strategies, different schemes, and I think when you see the real classic traditional powers playing in those tournaments, they always seem to find a way to come out on top, and so I don't see them beating a Syracuse or Duke or maybe even, North Carolina. I just don't see it.
Let me say this. I think that Syracuse could be in real trouble against NC State in the quarterfinals. I think Syracuse, obviously it's not like they're going to be spooked by going to Greensboro exactly. But this is what the ACC tournament is. It's in North Carolina. It's the North Carolina schools having those big home court advantages. NC State really, really needs a win, and maybe more than that.
Yeah, but something about Jim Boeheim on Tobacco Road. I'm done. I don't even want to see it, and I want Syracuse to be embarrassed. They can win it in a couple years from now, but their first year in the ACC, they have no business winning the tournament this year. I hope Jim Boeheim gets his butt kicked in Greensboro.
Well, everybody be watching that second game.
And I would say ass, but this is Post Sports Live.
I think Mike Wise should have his.
If the seedings hold and Syracuse plays Duke for the third time, that's going to be. I mean, they've played 2 classic games. That'll be a must-watch. All right, that's good. Well, we made it right in time. Look at that, guys. You guys hit the buzzer. Well done. All right.
Wait. Let me ask you a question. Is Maryland going to beat Florida State?
I think Maryland beats Florida State and loses to Virginia. That's my prediction. I mean, whatever. It doesn't matter with that magical run.
Will Turgeon have his job next year?
Yes, he'll have his job next year.
So can we now handicap the Big Ten tournament?
Next year, we'll have to start talking about that.
Crazy.
All right, let's move on to the Olympics, Mike. And you're back in the office, back writing. Let's talk about some of your highlights from Sochi. Give them to us.
The best thing, obviously, it was a personal moment when my cousin won a gold medal in half-pipe skiing. What's that?
Second cousin.
You're right. Second cousin, who I actually hadn't seen since '98 at a family reunion until I went out to visit him a week before Sochi. And so I didn't really know him. I knew his father pretty well, but I never knew him. And just to get to know the guy, realize that he's completely driven and focused, which probably means we're not related. And just to see a different side of the guy, just a really nice guy. He goes on Ellen last week, and literally they bring the baby out. He didn't even see it coming. He's blown away. It's Disney-esque, but it happened, and it was great.
And you got to write about it.
Yeah, and I got to write.
How did you guys celebrate? Did you celebrate with this sort of long-lost relative at all? Or
I did a little bit, but they made me hold this big baby popsicle stick fathead that was made because the child didn't get to come, so they did the big fathead, and I had to hold the popsicle stick while they all celebrated. It was a little embarrassing, but nonetheless, it was fun. The Russian hockey bar, these guys that were in this bar in the bottom of the hotel, they were just the salt of the earth guys. They stayed open all night. Vlad and Sasha, you couldn't make them up. They were out of Central Casting, good dudes, and it was a great time. I know that people say this about the Olympics, but it's true. It reaffirms why I went into this business. Sports does bring people together, and you see it when you're in that bubble. You've seen it when you're in a locker room. You see after all the money and the greed and all the stuff we go through that has nothing to do with why you got into this business. It's kind of cool to see that now and then.
And one of the best things was that there weren't any big safety threats or terrorist activity. I know you were worried about that going in on the front.
I mean, I was dreading these games like no other games, and by the time I got over there, I was just like, it's fine, it's secure.
Good.
I mean, when you don't blow up, you're good.
We're glad to have you back. I can't speak for everybody on this set, but I'm glad.
I'm certainly glad. That was amazing.
It's good to see you guys again.
Next week, everybody.
London Fletcher wishes you had stayed in Sochi.
Probably.
He still has Twitter. He can rant like that if he wants to. Next week's one of my favorite shows of the NCAA tournament. We'll break down the brackets a little bit, talk about our sleepers and upsets and all that good stuff. And I'm sure we'll talk about the Caps and what they're doing on on the West Coast at this time next week, whether they're still even in the picture. For Dan Steinberg, Mike Wise, LaVar Arrington, thanks for watching us, everybody. We'll see you next week on Post Sports Live.
Shockers, baby. Shockers.